Welcome back to Parenting Unplugged, the second season of our podcast created to support parents navigating the challenges of raising healthy and resilient teens. Today, we're talking about separation anxiety and school refusal, issues that can be distressing for both children and their parents. We are joined today by Dr. Stephanie Launer. Dr. Launer is a clinical and school psychologist with Endeavor Health Behavioral Health at our Deerfield location. Her expertise in both clinical and school settings gives her a unique perspective on how to support children who are struggling with these challenges. Could you give us some examples of what children struggling with separation anxiety or school refusal might be experiencing?
Yeah, that's a great place to start because it can really look different from child to child. A classic image is the child can be having a really hard time separating from parents. And like you said, don't want to be left alone, don't want to be left with babysitters or at daycare. But it can also present in more subtle ways, like difficulty sleeping alone at night or being in a different room alone in the house. So they might feel comfortable being in the same room as a parent only, but if a parent tries to leave the room, they might start to get tearful or weepy or ask the parent to stay with them. Another thing that can come up is some kids with separation anxiety want to be in touching distance with the parent, or they might need to have a special item, such as like a security blanket or something, that helps them to feel safe and secure. So it really can look different from child to child. Another thing that's really common is kids with separation anxiety who feel a lot of physical complaints like stomach aches or headaches if they start to get into a situation where parents might have to be separated from them.
How might behaviors look different in, say, a 7-year-old versus a 12-year-old?
So that's a hard question to answer in some ways because there's a lot of differences between certain 7-year-olds and other 7-year-olds, depending on their own level of development and maturity. What I usually do is work with a family to kind of get an idea of where their mental maturity is and their emotional maturity is. If they're struggling with separation anxiety, what we'll usually see is a regression in their behavior when they're being faced with something that's challenging for them. So, if a typical 7-year-old's behavior is to be polite and friendly and okay meeting new people, but then suddenly they're introduced to new people and they're cowering or they're refusing to say hello or they're shy and hiding their face, that's a big change in behavior. And that's not that uncommon for a younger child, but that's pretty uncommon for a much older child. So it really depends on individual circumstances and what a child's personality has been like.
How common is it for this anxiety to show up as feeling sick?
It's really common, and it's actually one of the most common ways that separation anxiety shows up for young kids because they often don't have the verbal skills or the thinking skills to be able to describe that they're feeling anxious. So, what it comes out instead is my head hurts, or my tummy hurts, or I just don't feel good. And so, part of what I'll do with them in treatment is helping them to understand that not feeling good is often their body's response to feeling stress.
What are some of the underlying causes or reasons a child might develop separation anxiety or school refusal?
So I kind of separate these into three distinct categories. And the first one is like biological factors. And this really has to do with the idea that some kids are born with a little bit of a more sensitive temperament. So you might have heard that some kids have like a fussier way of being in this world and they're just born that way. And that's true for many kids with anxiety. They're genetically predispositioned towards having a higher anxiety level. And that makes them a little bit more emotionally sensitive, sometimes a little bit more biologically sensitive to their own internal body sensations too, which can sometimes set off anxiety because they're feeling things changing in their body at such a subtle rate that it sets off an alarm signal for them. And so again, in therapy, what I'll do is teach them about that so they can reinterpret it so that it's less scary. But so that's the first factor is the biological predisposition. The second factor is really life events. So distressing things that can create a negative association with separation from parents can be a trigger for separation anxiety. And this can be something very significant, like a the loss of a parent can be a really obvious one. But smaller events can also be triggers for separation anxiety. Things like a child who was maybe staying with a relative and wasn't picked up on time can be quite stressful for a young child that has a predisposition towards anxiety. And that can actually be a triggering event that causes them to fall into this category of struggling with separation anxiety for a significant portion of their lives. And it's not anybody's fault. It just sometimes happens that way. And sometimes we can find the answers to these events, and sometimes we don't ever know. The third category is family factors, and this is the most complex one. And it relates to the biological category because anxiety tends to run in families. And so it's common for anxious kids to have at least one parent who also struggles with anxiety. So this can sometimes create a home environment that unintentionally perpetuates a cycle of anxiety and avoidance. So sometimes well meaning parents can be overprotective or they don't allow their children to experience enough age appropriate distress. This can actually hinder a child's ability to build resilience.
When a child says something like, my stomach hurts, how can a parent begin to tell if it's anxiety or a real illness?
That's a great question, and I'll be honest, it's pretty hard to tell, but what I often counsel parents to do is to have sort of a set criteria based on using like a thermometer to tell if a child is sick and have sort of like a set response to their kids. They can provide some validation, some emotional validation, like, "Oh, I'm sorry, your tummy hurts. That sounds really terrible." And then maybe offer, "Would you like to have some water? Or maybe do you need to go to the bathroom?" So you offer a couple of problem-solving options to the child. And then you can disengage and let the child come back to you if it continues to hurt. You can also offer some emotional support in the form of like a hug, like, "Oh, I'm sorry. That really stinks. Can I give you a hug?" And then if the child comes back and continues to tell you that they're feeling uncomfortable or in pain, then you can go in with like checking temperature and assessing any other vital signs or offering like maybe a mild child medication, and then ultimately making a decision from your end whether you think it's anxiety or whether you think it's sickness. But I do counsel parents it's the responsibility of the parent to make that decision, not the child.
Can you explain the relationship between anxiety and avoidance and how it fuels school refusal?
Absolutely. This is one of the first things I work on with families. Anxiety and avoidance have a cyclical relationship. So when we're afraid of something, our natural instinct is to avoid it. When we avoid it, we experience an immediate sense of relief, and that feels good. That feeling of relief powerfully reinforces the behavior of avoidance. The problem is, if we never approach the thing that makes us anxious, we never give our brains the opportunity to learn that the feared outcome probably won't happen, and that even if we feel anxious, the feeling will eventually come down on its own. So, applying this to school refusal, if a child who feels sick due to anxiety is allowed to stay home, they get immediate relief from those anxious feelings. However, this only strengthens the connection in their brain that tells them school is scary and staying home is safe. They also may incorrectly believe that they were actually sick and they avoided a terrible day rather than learning that the anxious feelings would have faded had they gone to school.
How can parents show confidence in their child's ability to handle school when they, the parent, are feeling worried themselves?
Ooh, I love this question because, as I mentioned before, anxiety tends to run in families, and one of the things that I'll often work with parents on is showing confidence in their kids because it's really, really important that kids see their parents expressing confidence in them. So I think part of it is parents recognizing their own anxiety signals when they're experiencing some distress because they're seeing their own children in distress, being able to recognize and regulate their own emotions so that they're not showing it on their face or they're limiting how much they're showing on their face. And then they're actually using really affirming speech with their kids saying, like, "Hey, I know this is really scary and I know that you can do it." So I'll actually teach parents to first recognize and then to use those specific support statements with their kids.
Now that we understand this cycle, let's talk about some more solutions. As a new school year gets underway, what are some evidence based strategies that parents can use to support a child with separation anxiety and help them confront their fears?
Well, I would say the goal is really to increase a positive association with school and to build a child's confidence in their ability to cope. And this really all starts with routines. So, one of the first things that I coach parents to do is to be proactive. So, a few weeks before school starts, it's good to get your kids back in the habit of getting up on time for school and in establishing a really predictable morning and bedtime routine. And this will make the transition easier. Some other things to do are to start visiting the school, go to the school playground, walk the route to school, or even just talk through what the morning routine will look like once school starts. You can set up a play date with a friend to have them play at the school playground just to make a positive association with the school. You can let them pick out new school supplies and decorate them. All of these things can improve their association with starting school. Another thing is helping them to build a coping plan. So, for kids who are really worried about physical symptoms, like getting sick if they're at school, or the ones who often complain about having stomach aches in the morning, you want to work with them to create like a little pouch of comfort items that they can keep in their backpack or take with them to school and leave in their lockers. It could include things like mints or crackers for an upset stomach. It could have like a little small fidget toy or a stone to rub, and a little note from you where you write a message of confidence in them. This gives them a specific and tangible plan of things that they can use when they're feeling really anxious and uncomfortable in school. You can also talk with them about how their day's going to go, and then about when they come home from school, how you'll be there to welcome them back with a hug and a kiss, and maybe even a special treat if they made it through the whole day using their special comfort items to get through it.
What are some signs that it might be time to seek professional help? And what can a family expect from therapy for these issues?
I would say it's time to seek help when the anxiety is causing significant distress and really interfering with the child's ability to function or the family's like daily life. If you've tried some of these strategies and the school refusal is really creating a lot of problems or it's worsening, then I think it's really a good idea to reach out. In terms of what treatment can look like, especially for younger kids, it's kind of a multi-component approach. And so I'll tell you what I do. And I should say that I do work from a cognitive behavioral perspective, and there's different approaches to treatment. But what I tend to recommend is to start with educating the child about anxiety, like I mentioned, and helping them understand the connection between their physical feelings and their worries. I also help them to identify and challenge any automatic or anxious thoughts that they might have, and sort of learn that even though they might be feeling anxious about things that could happen, it's probably pretty unlikely. I work very hard to involve the parents at every step because what I do with kids in therapy is not going to transfer outside of therapy unless parents are learning the same strategies and practicing on a daily basis at home. So I do a lot of coaching on how to manage their own, a parent's own responses to the distress of their kids, and again, how to use those supportive statements. Another big part of treatment is helping children to gradually face their fears. So this is a really core component of treatment, and it involves identifying some feared situations for each individual child and gradually helping the child to face those fear situations in controlled settings so that they learn that they can handle things that they initially think are too hard for them to handle. The really important thing about this part is that kids confront these anxiety provoking situations at their own pace, and that's how they develop confidence. And so that's where it's really important to work with the therapist on working on the child's pace. And lastly, I would say involving the school is a really, really important step for any child that has school refusal. Working with the school social worker, counselor, psychologist early and often is critical. They're going to be your point person at the school who can support your child when you're not there. They're also going to be the ones that can implement plans where if your child is saying they're sick and they want to go home, that can be the one saying like, we'll let you sit in the nurse's office for 10 minutes, but then you got to go back to class rather than calling you and sending your child home immediately. So it's very important to talk with the school and have an active plan in place. Last thing I'll say is if parents are looking for a pretty good user-friendly resource, I would recommend the book Helping Your Child Overcome Separation Anxiety or School Refusal by Dr. Andrew Eisen and Dr. Linda Engler. I think it's very practical.
What would you say is the most important message for a parent to hear when they're starting this process?
I think a really important message for parents to know is that anxiety is normal and healthy and not something to be scared of, and that they can really help their kids to overcome and to be resilient just by having a positive attitude about it themselves.
I think it's important for parents to know that they don't have to navigate child anxiety and school refusal alone. Dr. Launer, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and these incredibly valuable strategies with us today. Thanks for listening to Parenting Unplugged. We'll see you next month.